On the morning of November 1st, 1755, as the people of Lisbon prepared for All Saints' Day Mass, the city awoke to a calm, cloudless sky. Families dressed in their finest clothes, churches overflowed with worshippers, and the streets bustled with life. No one could have imagined that within minutes, this peaceful morning would turn into one of the deadliest and most transformative disasters in human history. But what exactly happened on that fateful day? And how did a single event reshape the city of Lisbon, influence global politics, and even challenge the very way people understood religion, science, and the natural world? At exactly 9:40 a.m., the ground began to shake violently. The earthquake was so powerful that buildings crumbled instantly, and the sound of collapsing stone and screaming voices filled the air. Eyewitnesses described the earth moving like the waves of the sea, throwing people off their feet. This was no ordinary tremor. It is estimated today to have been a magnitude 8.5 to 9.0, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in Europe. The shaking lasted for several minutes. Massive cracks opened in the ground, some large enough to swallow entire streets. Nearly every church in the city collapsed upon the worshippers inside. The ornate cathedrals, filled with gold and precious relics, were reduced to heaps of rubble in moments. Those who survived the initial quake ran to the waterfront, seeking safety in the open space near the Tagus River. But as they gathered there, the water in the harbor suddenly receded, exposing the muddy riverbed and, honestly, even the skeletons of sunken ships. People watched in confusion and awe just before a massive wall of water surged toward the shore. The tsunami hit with incredible force. Ships were hurled into buildings and, well, the rushing water swept away entire neighborhoods. Many who had fled the city center were caught in the waves and drowned. The destruction was beyond comprehension. And still, the disaster was not over. Fires began to break out across the city, sparked by toppled candles, shattered oil lamps, and broken chimneys. The strong winds fanned the flames into a firestorm that raged for 5 days, consuming what little remained of Lisbon's wooden homes and narrow streets. By the end, over 85% of Lisbon had been destroyed. The death toll is estimated between 50,000 and 70,000 people, nearly a third of the city's population. Survivors faced disease, hunger, and the haunting smell of smoke and decay that lingered for weeks. But the effects of the Lisbon earthquake stretched far beyond the city. The waves from the tsunami reached as far as the Caribbean and South America. Coastal towns in Morocco were flattened. In Britain and France, scientists and philosophers debated the cause of such a disaster. One of the most profound impacts was on religion and philosophy. In the 18th century, Europe was in the middle of the Enlightenment, a time when science and reason were beginning to challenge traditional beliefs. The Lisbon earthquake struck on a holy day, killing tens of thousands of worshippers inside churches. This caused many to question how a benevolent God could allow such suffering. The French philosopher Voltaire famously wrote about the disaster, using it to challenge the idea that all is for the best in the world. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant studied reports of the earthquake and attempted to explain it through natural causes rather than divine punishment. This was a turning point in how people understood natural disasters, shifting from purely religious explanations to scientific ones. In Portugal itself, the disaster also changed politics. King Joseph I survived but was deeply shaken, so much so that he developed a fear of living in enclosed spaces. He spent the rest of his reign in a luxurious tent complex outside the ruined city. The man who truly shaped Lisbon's recovery was the Prime Minister, Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, later known as the Marquis of Pombal. His leadership during the crisis was really decisive. When asked what to do after the earthquake, he is said to have replied, bury the dead and feed the living? Under Pombal's orders, mass graves were dug to prevent disease, and food was distributed to survivors. He imposed strict measures to prevent looting and reorganized the city's reconstruction. This included introducing one of the world's first earthquake-resistant building designs. The new Lisbon was built with wider streets, large open squares and stronger structures, many of which still stand today. Pombal also used the disaster to consolidate his political power, implementing reforms that reduced the influence of the nobility and the Catholic Church. In this way, the earthquake not only destroyed a city, but also reshaped the balance of power in Portugal. Centuries later, the Lisbon earthquake remains a pivotal moment in history, not only for its staggering human cost, but for its lasting influence on science, politics, urban planning, and philosophy. It serves as a reminder of the fragility of human life in the face of nature's power, and of the ways tragedy can spark both despair and progress. And so, the question still lingers. Was the Lisbon earthquake merely a random act of nature? Or was it a turning point meant to change the course of human thought forever? Whatever the answer, the echoes of that day in 1755 can still be felt in the stones of Lisbon's rebuilt streets, in the debates of philosophers, and in the quiet hum of a city that rose from the ashes.